When I was growing up, I liked to draw and paint from the time I was a little kid, but it didn't really have much of a connection to the more physical passions I had, the visceral stuff, until I got into skateboarding. And then skateboarding with the rebellious side of the activity, and then all the creative culture that went with it, making homemade t-shirts, making stencils, making stickers, that got me into that stuff. And then later on, when I moved from the South, where I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, to Rhode Island, and I started to see graffiti, I thought, I want to do stuff like that that's on the street, that doesn't have to go through the bureaucracy of asking to show in a gallery or a museum or ask for permission, but I want to use the tools that I learned basically from punk rock and skateboarding. I went to the Rhode Island School of Design in Providence, Rhode Island, but I also did a year of art high school out here in California in a place called Idlewild. When I was in Idlewild, we took a trip from the mountains down into LA to go see a pop art survey at MoCA, and there was an artist named Robbie Canal. I didn't know his name at the time, but I figured it out later, who was putting these posters around downtown on electrical boxes of Ronald Reagan. He was selling arms to Iran to fund this secret war in South America, and so there was a poster that had Reagan, and it said contradiction, contra above, diction below, and I thought, this is really smart. It's political, it's funny, it's a great painting, even though it's unflattering, but it's well painted. I thought, this is the kind of thing I want to do, and so that's how I also got more interested in doing street art and merging my social and political point of view with my art. I've always liked to make things from the time I was a little kid. But one of the things I saw while I was in art school, because I am traditionally trained in art, is that a lot of art is very elitist, and I want art to be more democratic. In fact, I used music as the model, because music, whether it was more underground stuff or top 40 radio stuff, was not intimidating to people. So if you wanted to listen, you didn't feel like you needed a college degree to listen to everything from, you know, The Clash, the Sex Pistols, Blondie, all the stuff that inspired me when I was younger. You could just listen. So I was emulating that model of democratizing art the way that music was democratic. I use my art to connect to real world problems, because I see art as a really powerful way to make people think about something they wouldn't be thinking about otherwise. And it's kind of a Trojan horse approach, I think, where you seduce someone or you intrigue someone with the visual, and then the point of view that's there is something that they pick up on, you know, after they're already intrigued. And I do that with my street art. I do that with a lot of what I do with my posters. The amazing thing about how I can use art for real world problems is that I can put a spotlight on an issue. I can hopefully share my point of view and make somebody think about it in a different way than they do now. And then I can also generate revenue for work that's done on that issue by organizations. Being philanthropic or charitable is a real luxury. A lot of artists can't afford to do that, but they can at the very least afford to use their art to say something. And so if the art gets traction and there's money generated, great, do more, but at least use your voice through your art. That's my philosophy. I think that the way that art impacts people and affects the community is that art is both personal in how each person interprets it, but universal in that the feelings that art conjures are feelings that everyone has, and so it can be the start of a conversation about a personal point of view and sort of a collective point of view. So, you know, that has the ability to move the needle, and I've seen it in really significant ways with pieces I've created, like the Obama Hope poster and the We the People series I did for the first Women's March in 2017. These things have gone viral, and Yeah, what I do is I try to imbue all the portraits that I'm making with a universal, undeniable humanity that gets people looking at kind of our what we have in common rather than what divides us. The goals I have with my work are both inside and outside of the art world. The art world provides a certain platform for me, and I think it reaches a lot of people who are sophisticated and influential, but I want to go well beyond what the art world usually can reach and what it can usually achieve, and reach a lot of people. And what I want really is I want my work to inspire people, make people think, make people act. You know, when I look at some of the visual art that's inspired me, there's some artists like Banksy, like Robbie Canal, like Barbara Kruger, like JR, who have done, Jenny Holzer, who have done really great social commentary in their work. But I'd say that even more significantly, musicians like Patti Smith, DEVO, Rage Against the Machine, Bob Marley, Johnny Cash, Bikini Kill, The Clash, they have really inspired me to think how art can be appealing but also intellectually provocative and inspire people to change how they think about things and change how they act. I got to know Robert Matthew through the LA music scene. We had a lot of friends in common, like Billy Idol, Steve Jones, Clem Burke from Blondie. These are people from some of my favorite bands. Steve Jones is from the Sex Pistols, which was a really important band for me. Mark Mothersbaugh from DEVO and Robert knew each other for a long time. And Robert was somebody who shot great photos of so many of my heroes, and also just a fun, generous spirit, somebody fun to be around. And you know, when I look at a lot of the photos that Robert took, they're capturing people at their, in their prime, at their, a state of greatest power. You know, their iconic essence frequently is captured in Robert's photos, and I find that super inspiring for me as an illustrator, because when I illustrate things, I'm building on the existing power of an image, and then I'm stylizing and idealizing even further. So to know that someone's thinking about that as a photographer, then that they're a kindred spirit. I got to work with Robert on images of Billy Idol, images of Iggy Pop and James Williamson. These been very, very amazing projects to be part of. Iggy and the Stooges' Raw Power is one of my all-time favorite records. So to get to work from one of Robert's photos for the deluxe reissue of that album was pretty phenomenal for me. This generation of young creatives can accomplish pretty much anything they set their mind to, because there's so much more accessible technology now. The tools of empowerment for anyone are there. Back when I made a skateboard video in the mid-90s, a 9 gig hard drive to take all the footage, aggregate it, and edit it was $5,000. Now that's on a thumb drive for $5. And so a lot of the tools to create in a really sophisticated way are accessible, and that's for art, for music, and a lot of the platforms to disseminate ideas are very accessible too. The thing that I worry about is that this technology also creates a lot more distractions. So there are tools of empowerment that are accessible, and yet many people choose to use the technology for passive things, to be entertained, to numb themselves with entertainment rather than empower themselves creatively. I want to see the power that people have used for good. So I think that what I try to do in my work is create not only a lot of messages about different things going on in the world, but a template for empowerment. And I try to be very transparent about the tools that I use. Well, I think we're going to be talking about some of the techniques that I used for my work in general, and also for this project. But I just want to see people seize all the opportunities that they have at their disposal, because really there's no way of knowing what you can accomplish until you start doing it. It took me a long time to get traction, but it's amazing what I've accomplished with much more primitive tools in the past to be where I am now. In some ways, I wish I could be a young person now, because everything that took me years and years to build could happen much more quickly if I had the same focus now that I had then. Yeah, I think young people have an idealism that is very special, and if there's a way to manifest those ideals creatively at a young age, then it's a practice that will be there for life. The problem is a lot of people don't get the encouragement or the support creatively that they need to build confidence, and then as all of life's adult struggles start to weigh on them, they give up on the idea of empowering themselves creatively and using their voice. I want all of that to be encouraged in school and in every avenue in life. So one of the things I'm trying to do with my work always is show people that it is possible to, on a budget, without being somebody that's been told they're a genius or an expert or some sort of protege, to be able to say something to the world that is important to them and unique to them. I think for all the different art movements that have been out there, they're always a response to what's going on in the world at the time. So, the advances in the Renaissance, there was an enlightenment scientifically, but it was still merged with religion. There's things like Impressionism, because the camera had been invented, and so moving away from being completely literal with mark making was something that made sense, because a camera could capture things that were more literal. Dadaism as a response to the world feeling like it was collapsing in World War I, and people needing a little bit of absurd humor. Pop art that would, in a way, address consumer culture and broaden the audience for art by making mundane objects finally valid as fine art subject matter. All of those things are things that I think about, but when it comes to street art and the kind of political art that I do now, what I think about is what's going on culturally and my need to respond to what's happening in the world. Street art is very democratic. I use the internet too, but the thing I like about street art is that it still has that impact of a human interaction at scale, molecules colliding. The internet can be very passive and very safe. So I like the idea of doing street art that when people stumble upon it, it's awe-inspiring. I also like documenting that and sharing it through social media, because that's a secondary way of showing it in context and the impact in context. I'm less of a fan of what I see a lot now of people making things in their bedroom, sharing them in a safe way, and never going out and having those interactions with the cityscape or with other human beings. So in a way, what I'm doing is trying to democratize art, but then also looking at the ways that some of the technology has democratized art, but also in maybe tamped down the feeling that comes with art, because everything cycles through so quickly on the internet. So I'm responding to the opportunities for democratization, and trying to push back against the ways that all of the democratization can be overwhelming, so much white noise that it numbs us. I want to keep the feeling in the mix. So yeah, that's that's where I think the sweet spot is, using what's good about where we are socially and technologically, and then also pushing back against the way that there can be a dehumanizing aspect to that. With this collaboration with one of Robert Matthews' photos, working with Robert's daughter Ruby and Elon, I thought about one, a band that I love who have great ideas and have social commentary in their work, but of course also a photo of Robert's that I think is a really powerful, strong image. And as I try to do in a lot of my work, my approach was to think, how can I make an image that I think will appeal to the DEVO audience, which is a decent sized audience, but also anybody that just thinks that the image is interesting, which I think would be a lot of people, and then merge that with a reference to a lot of the great social commentary that DEVO's had, but also the need for voter participation in the next election. In my opinion, young people are not showing up in great enough numbers, which is leaving election results in the hands of people who have different interests than a lot of younger people. And the great thing about DEVO is they're very politically active. They're from Ohio. They go back to Ohio and they do events there to get people out to vote. So this all came together with a lot of synergy. Mark Mothersbaugh from DEVO was really into this. Robert had a great photo of DEVO from the New Traditionalist album cycle, and getting people out to vote is something that I want to do, and I know that Ruby and Elon want to see happen. So Freedom of Choice is the name of one of DEVO's albums. This is my sketch for how this is going to work. I'm not totally finished. But of course, the great thing about democracy is you have freedom of choice. Duty Now for the Future is another DEVO album, so use your freedom of choice, your duty now for the future. It's basically saying it's a privilege to participate in democracy, but it's also a duty. And democracy doesn't work well if you don't participate. So I love this, and I'm considering weaving in, of course, some text about voting itself, but also other clever quotes from DEVO. One of them is, once again, DEVO attempts to cut through the mental grease and grime with techniques of positive mutation. The guys are all, they've got their combs. And I think that anything that's got a little bit of latitude for interpretation that stokes the DEVO fan because it's a reference to DEVO, but also applies to the idea of educating yourself and combing through the disinformation in order to make an educated choice when voting. That's great. I'm still, in the process of doing this. You can see how this is a mock-up before I have the more stylized, illustrated version, to see how I want to use the V for vote, for victory, for DEVO. But it may evolve from this. I go through a lot of trial and error in my process of coming up with a composition I'm pleased with. I'm happy with the way this is working so far, but it'll potentially end up differently, but the message will be the same. This message of, of voting, of avoiding de-evolution, which is what DEVO stands for. Instead of evolving, they saw society as devolving because people were being less rigorous about questioning things and educating themselves. So this is a great project to say, let's move it in the other direction.